Easter Sunday, a very dangerous day. It spells out the imminent end of our Mela. And prolonged separation. I can already see Jivanuga walk off to Freiburg to be very busy. And Gokularani back to Switzerland. Devotees to Munich, Kapfenberg, Rome, Tenerife, Hungary, Rimini, Poland, Sweden. It's an amazing thought, no? How everybody going into the world. Just like in Bhakti-Ratnakara. Actually, I didn't get to read so much from Bhakti-Ratnakara as I wanted to. This is a very cherished book of mine. You see, there's many books full of quotes of scriptures. In Bhakti-Ratnakara, you hardly have one quote. Of course, it's permeated by the spiritual Siddhanta. It is not lacking quotations. And it has lots of Siddhanta for teaching as well. At the same time, it's a flowing story of Vaishnavas coming and going and telling so many wonderful things. The journey of Nityananda and Jiva Goswami through Mayapur Dham, Navadvip, Dham Mahatmya, the stories of the great sages like Shamananda, Narottam Das Thakur, and Srinivasacharya. Being a professor of devotional literature, Srinivasacharya humbled the pride of the impersonalists who say that everything is illusion. He spent his days with his disciples in Jajigram, following the path chalked out by Narottam Das Thakur. He always eagerly anticipated his reunion with Narottam Das. Coming together and then leaving each other. That was going on then. And then when they came back and they brought the new recruits, the new souls they had conquered for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And they got to love each other and rejoice with each other. This is Mela consciousness. I'm almost becoming sentimental about it, you know. Because it's actually not sentimental. It's a true appreciation of the true meaningful souls on the way you're meeting. Because if you're sentimental, then you don't go on serving. Then you become just mental. And that's not what we are looking for. So it's actually emotional, spiritually emotional. Sri Narottam Das Thakur started for Navadvip with the memory of Lord Gauranga in his mind. When he arrived on the outskirts of Navadvip, you know, for me, I was just there a few days ago on the outskirts of Navadvip. He reminded himself that Navadvip was Lord Gauranga's place of pastimes, where the residents spent their days in Harinam Sankirtan. It was here that festivals took place in each and every house of the devotees. and the residents cared not for their routine lives. Just the day when I arrived in Mayapur, the deity of Gopinath had come from a nearby village. He was traveling on a boat with Radharani, and he was staying just on the other side of the Ganga from our Janavi Kunja Goti. As soon as we heard that Gopinath had arrived there, we jumped in a boat and went there. All of Navadvip was assembling on the shore of the Ganga to get a glimpse at Gopinath, who was standing in the boat in his makeshift altar. And the boat was full of offerings. And the people of Navadvip would all come and bring flower garlands, continuous flow. Thousands of people came to see Gopinath. And because we got there with the boat, we didn't have to go all the way to the back of all the people. But we went with our boat right next to the boat of Gopinath. And then there was prasad distribution to thousands of people. Gopinath was only going to stay for 6 hours. Then he went on to Krishna Nagar to visit. This pastime is enacted once a year. So like this, Navadvip is a constant festival of devotion, constant memory of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It was here that festivals took place in each and every house of the devotees, and the residents cared not for their routine lives. An unhappy person could not be found in Navadvip, because every day everyone saw Lord Gaura Chanda. Narottam Das lamented his misfortune because he was not born at the time of Lord Chaitanya's manifested pastimes in Navadvip. While thinking of this, his miseries overflowed their boundaries, and he shed profuse tears. Upon entering Navadvip, Narottam Das was enchanted by the beautiful environment. He found that the inhabitants were full of joy and that they roamed the streets singing the holy name of the Lord. They continually talked about the glories of Lord Gaura Chanda and his magnificent dance. Repeatedly chanting numerous names of Lord Gaurahari in relation to his associates. In a beautiful setting of Nadia, the people joyfully shouted the holy names and glories of Lord Gaura Chanda. Simply by absorbing the divine beauty of Nadia, Narottam Das became overwhelmed with ecstatic emotions and shed tears of joy. Then suddenly, a great sensation arose within his mind, and Narottam Das was able to visualize all of Nadia floating in an ocean of misery. He became perplexed by this ominous vision and pondered over its cause. Indeed, the very thought paralyzed him, and so he sat beneath a beautiful banyan tree. By the miraculous influence of this holy tree, which is still there, Narottam Das, fatigued, became mitigated, and he regained his patience. Then, as Narottam Das continued to console himself, he saw an elderly Brahmana coming his way. He was eager to speak to the Brahmin, but he checked himself. The Brahmana habitually spent some time sitting beneath this tree, as it had been a place where Nimai had played as a child. When he saw Narottama Das, the Brahmana thought that he must be a devotee of Nimai. Also, the elderly Brahmana could barely tolerate the scorching heat of the sun. Simply a glance at Narottam Das cooled the heat of his body. The Brahmana was attracted by Narottam's well-built form, beautiful complexion, and his large eyes that shed tears of love. He wanted to inquire about Narottam's history. The Brahmana approached Narottam Das and inquired about his name and his home. Narottam Das most humbly bowed down to the Brahmana and answered his question. The Brahmana then embraced Narottam, and they sat beneath the tree for some time. The Brahmana told Narottam Das that he could not describe the happy atmosphere of Nadia unless he were given 4 or 5 months with which to speak. Unfortunately, however, Nadia had become a barren land from the very day that Nimai had left. The inhabitants of Nadia could not understand what force had driven Nimai to accept the renounced order of life from Keshava Bharati. The Brahmana could not bear to think of Nimai's existence as a sannyasi and the shaving of his beautiful hair. Because he always thought of Nimai wearing gorgeous clothing, he could not bear to see him wearing only a korpi. The Brahmana went on to say that Nimai had deprived the inhabitants of Nadia of his sweet association. After visiting innumerable holy places, Nimai had taken up residence in Nilachal, and he lived there happily with his associates. The Brahmana went on to explain how the residents of Navadvip had received news of Nimai from the people who came from Nilachal, and that news brought them their only happiness. The sudden disappearance of Nimai in Nilachal was an intolerable shock for the people of Nadia. The favorite associates of Nimai disappeared soon after, and the miserable condition of the devotees in Nadia became beyond description. Day by day, Nadia sank into the depths of utter darkness. The disappearance of Srinivas Pandit and others increased the darkness of gloom. The Brahmana felt greatly disheartened when he mentioned the name of Vishnu Priya, the wife of Nimai, who was the embodiment of goddess Lakshmi and a woman of exalted devotional qualities. She had also left this world only a few days before. The disappearance of Nimai burned the hearts of the residents of Nadia, and those who retained any breath appeared to be almost devoid of life. The inhabitants of Navadvip had become impatient, and they cried out the name of Nimai both while sleeping and while awake. They talked continuously about the divine character of Nimai, and they shed tears while remembering him. Even wicked people in Nadia were disheartened by his absence. The Brahmana denigrated his own position, saying that as a sophist he had not recognized Nimai, whom he had considered to be a human being. According to Vaishnava scriptures, Nimai was an incarnation of Lord Narayan, whose wonderful pastimes enchanted the entire world. Also the Brahmana had known him from the very childhood. He had never recognized him as the Supreme Lord. The Brahmana told Narottam Das under the banyan tree where they were sitting. Nimai had studied the scripture with great enthusiasm. The Brahmana compared Nimai encircled by his companions with the moon, surrounded by the stars. The Brahmana remembered that beautiful scene, also that memory now gave him pain. He told Narottam Das that one day he actually visualized Sachimanandana, surrounded by a large number of disciples. Overwhelmed with joy, the Brahmana had fainted onto the ground, and when he regained consciousness, the vision was gone. However, considering that Nimai and his associates are eternally present in Nadia, the Brahmana daily came to the banyan tree to sit. It was by the wish of Nimai that the Brahmana met Narottam Das Thakur. He blessed Narottam Das and offered him his best wishes so that he might remain a favorite devotee of Nimai. Narottam Das was very pleased with the sweet and affectionate words of the Brahmana, and he bowed down again at his feet. With eyes full of tears, he requested the Brahmana to bless such an ignorant person as himself. The Brahmana clasped Narottam Das to his chest, holding him in his arms for some time, soaking him with tears. The Brahmana informed Narottam Das that Navadvip was a large town wherein he would find many associates of Nimai. He directed Narottam to go to Mayapur first and pointed out the road. There he would find the house of Sachi and Jagannath Mishra, where Lord Narayan had appeared in the form of Nimai. As directed by the Brahmana, Narottam Das started for Mayapur, passing through various villages on the way. He frequently asked for direction, and when he at last entered Mayapur, he humbly inquired about the way to Jagannath Mishra's house. While pointing out the right direction, the person gave directions began to shed tears, and his sorrow was shared by Narottam Das, who also cried. When Narottam Das entered the house of Jagannath Mishra, the Yoga Pit, he saw a kind-looking brahmachari in white cloth. When the brahmachari saw Narottam Das, he thought that even though his heart had been pierced by misery, he now somehow felt relief at the sight of this person. The brahmachari immediately thought that this person must be Narottam Das, the faithful companion of Srinivasacharya, who had come from Braja with the Goswami's books. He also remembered how Narottam Das had been attracted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Ramkeli. The brahmachari inquired from Narottam Das about his name and home, and Narottam replied, giving all the details. The man in white clothes informed Narottam Das of his identity and then tearfully embraced him. Narottam Das at once fell at the feet of that man. Being unable to control his tears, Narottam Das cried loudly, lying in the courtyard of the house of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The brahmachari tried his best to console him. However, Narottam Das could not control his emotion, and he remained lying at the feet of Ishana, a favorite associate of Lord Chaitanya. Ishana was the servant, of the family of Sachimata. Sri Ishana picked up Narottam Das and lovingly embraced him while examining his face with great affection. He tearfully told Narottam Das that he was very kind that he had come at that moment. He informed... Thank you. Yes. He informed Narottam how he had been able to get news of him from visiting Vaishnavas. Ishana then took Narottam Das to his room where he met Damodar Pandit. Narottam Das bowed down at the lotus feet of Damodar, and the Pandit cordially embraced him. He affectionately told Narottam that they all had been waiting to meet him. Damodar Pandit repeatedly told Narottam how grateful they were that he had come at that moment, because the disappearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was gradually taking away their lives. He feared that he might never see Srinivas Acharya. Damodar Pandit then introduced Narottam Das to Sripati Srinidhi and others. Even those associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who had already departed from the world came to meet Narottam in his dreams. Narottam Das spent a few days there and then decided to go to Nilachal. Also, he was sorry to leave Nadia. He went to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's house and requested Ishana Thakur for permission to go to Jagannath-puri. Ishana Thakur encouraged Narottam to travel quickly to Nilachal, because that most holy place was also descending into utter darkness. Ishana had recently received news from Puri that the mental condition of Gopinath Acharya and others, according to the will of the Lord, had become quite miserable. He wanted Narottam Das to meet them, to visit Sri Kanda and Kantaka as soon as possible, and then to return to Nadia, along with Srinivas Acharya. Ishana cherished the hope of meeting Srinivas and Narottam together. He also asked Narottam Das to visit Chantipur and Kardaha on his way, because that would be enlivening to the devotees. After that, Ishana remained silent, and being unable to understand Ishana's mind, Narottam Das could not control his tears.